So, hey, we're in on the newest episode. I think this will be number 11. Got Kevin back, and if we're lucky, we'll even get a co host. So, we were just talking a little bit. Chat's here to keep us company, which, well, you're all going to miss that if you're listening in. But if you're watching, well, glad to have you here.
Well, I would say they can, if they want to,
Oh,
catch
yeah,
the
I'll
chat
have a
on
link to
my
Kevin's
on
channel, so
my
you can
end
actually
as
watch
well.
this later.
Yeah, it's not. We're catching all the data. We're not going to let an opportunity like this slip by. And you're going out on iTunes, right?
Actually, I'm on everything now.
On
Spotify,
everything. Okay.
iTunes, basically like everything. Google. It's I've got it
Hmm.
linked up through Anchor. I'll link it through. I'll put my Anchor link in the chat for everybody that's doing that, and of course, everybody that's tuning in will already know about all that.
So this being able to get on Spotify, etc., do they sort of limit the time that you can do streams, or how's the how are they making any how does it work for them, right, with respect to sort of hosting? Do you pay to have it hosted, or
Actually, not at all, and I can make money advertising too. The money's not great, but from what I'm seeing from some of my musician friends, what you're making through Anchor is actually it's in the area of what people with like 20, 30, 40,000 subs are making. I mean, I've only,
all right,
being completely honest, I mean, I don't mind to be out in the open about it. I've made 94 cents so far.
94 cents? Yes.
I know, big bucks, big bucks. But I mean, that's not bad for just some nobody with, 10 episodes of a podcast.
Well, I did get because of my Kaufman streams. Well, I'm not monetized now. They took my monetization away, but that made, I want to say, like $500, $600 over the course of a few months. There's like 20,000 views on it, and if you add up all the different streams where I've gone at him, and well, the problem was just getting the money out of uh, Google. That was problematic.
There's
So
a lot
I
of
had
people that run
to
into
had
issues getting a proper payout.
You've had issues?
Yeah, I'm demonetized at this point, and they took my $50 before they demonetized me. So yeah, I'm never going to see my money from them.
It's a good business model for them, right?
Oh
Entice
yeah.
people in, give them.
Oh, absolutely brilliant.
Mm. So, where are you with respect to the elections? What's your position, and um, where are you
Well,
going?
well, I did my voting early and in person because that's what you do. Because then you can at
Mm,
least make sure what you've put in is going to be what goes in.
mm,
Beyond that, it's there's a classic saying they wouldn't be trying to demoralize you if they thought they had already won. So
mm,
I'd say that they seem genuinely decided, and there's even a number of people who are quite upset about the early votes that they've taken. I mean, what was it? Just the other day, when all this Biden stuff dropped just the other day, a bunch of searches came up for Biden China and change votes. So,
mm.
well, we'll see how that goes. Like we were discussing actually just before this, in most of the swing states here, you actually can change your vote if you intend to, if you've already voted by mail or absentee, but you'll have to talk to like your election board to see how it's done because election laws are so weird that it really varies state to state. But it's
Mm.
worth asking. I
Uh,
mean, if you got some regrets, you might not be out of time.
so, I mean, my feeling was after watching the replay of, I didn't catch it live, but the replay of the last debate between Biden and Trump, Biden looked a tired, confused old man. And I think in a normal world, what was dropped off in those hard drives should sink him. I think.
No,
Um,
undoubtedly. If things were normal, which they
if
are
things were
far,
normal,
far
which is
from.
this is, I'm very suspicious of things being very far from normal right now, and
Well, it's a
uh,
suspicious time, and suspicion is probably your safest avenue.
yeah, be circumspect of everything. So I don't know if you want to give away where you are, but what do you think your state is going to do if there is a contention for the vote? How do you see that sort of playing out?
My state isn't really a swing state. I'd say there's a very, very strong chance we'll go red. It would surprise me incredibly if that weren't the case, especially with my interactions with the people while I was voting early, too. Everybody was very coy, but what they were hinting at was fairly clear. Like, we've got this duty. We've got to get in here and make sure we get this vote in just in case something happens because times are really dangerous. And it wasn't we need to change things, it was we need to save things. And that gives one
Mm.
a particular vibe.
Yes. Well, I mean, I hope it goes smoothly. I really do, because whether they've done it deliberately or not, it's been a riveting show as these things have unfolded in the US, and I just look to where I am, and it doesn't need to be so nuts
Oh,
as it's playing out in the US. It's, to me, it's very, very. I would almost say contrived, almost how
oh.
it's been.
Well, I mean, in raw terms, it absolutely is. It absolutely is. It's and beyond it being, kind of a contrived mess, we've also got ye old COVID zombie.
Right, right.
And, a bunch of people that are legitimately already unhinged.
Mm.
Getting a dose of something to drive them even farther over the edge is, well, not necessarily a good thing in an election year.
Right. Yeah, and I put forward the premise that that's what you're seeing on the streets, and it's the U.S. is the most uh, susceptible country to it, because of these the nature of the politics of the country. Right. You are seeing some chaos in other parts of the world, but I would say that the social pressures, etc., they're not going to have mass protests in China, because they'll just nail you, or just take you off in train carts, right?
Yeah, we saw what happened in
Europe,
Hong Kong as soon as they passed the law.
right, and that was, I mean, to me, that was a huge red flag as to what's going on, and um, if
And a preview of
Trump,
Taiwan should things
yes,
go weird.
yes, absolutely, and I think that's the Chinese want Taiwan,
Oh,
and I
undoubtedly.
think that they're prepared to do a lot to make that happen, and um, it could be that the next term, if it's, well, whoever gets in, if it's Biden, who's so weak, etc., they probably try and do it through a negotiating table. But if it's Trump that stays in, yeah, it could get. Look, I live near a pretty big Japanese Air Force base, and there's a lot more air traffic going up, and it's a lot more, um, how would you say, dynamic, right? Usually on a calm day, it's that, they're doing bump runs where they'll come in and they hit the runway and then they'll sort of take off, and now you're sort of seeing them go out and do more maneuvers. They're heading out towards the coast, but um, it's you can see it winding up here, and the problem is, I don't. Japan doesn't have the. It's not like the United States, right, where people love fighting there. Um,
Oh yeah, no, you have a more homogenous society, but above that, you've also got mm, a more traditional society that's
mm,
still steeped in its traditions. They haven't abandoned them, and quote unquote embraced modernity.
Yes, thank God.
Right?
that's that's all I
I
can
mean, a
say.
little
There's,
tradition's actually a good thing. It's they may
I
have
think
killed all
so.
the people with the glasses this last time through, but I'll tell you what, when that one Mongolian felt, was it Mongolian? I think he was Mongolian. Well,
Uh, you're talking about Genghis Khan.
yes, thank you. Yeah, that guy that no, not Clint Eastwood. The Duke played him. That's right. Which was
the Yeah, I don't know. I don't know
oh
which. Are searching?
yeah, it's
Someone's just asking who I'm talking with. This is Evan from. This is how do you say it's not? This is not a podcast. I never
the
remember
fake
it.
Untitled
The
podcast.
fake Untitled podcast. That's what this is called. And you can get
Oh, John
this
Wayne is who I was
stream.
trying to think of.
Sorry, say that again.
John Wayne. He played Genghis Khan.
Oh, really? I
Yeah,
haven't seen that one then. It's been years since.
it's a trip. It is an absolute trip. He was beautifully cast. We'll just say he even darkened
Well, I
up a bit
will.
for the role.
Really, got the blackface on.
Well, lighter, more like a tan German, if you will.
I see. Those were the days. He was gay, right? Is that what the?
That's the word. That's the word. I think he was like old school gay though. So had a woman, maybe tried to have a kid, and tried to integrate with society, but also did the whole Hollywood closet parties and all that shebang.
Mm. Yeah. So, but again, where's you were talking about sort of keeping traditions, and
Oh yeah, yeah.
for sure, Japan has done that, and you kind of you can't get rid of that element of society. I think it's a biological constant, right? And we see it across a lot of species, right? For some reason, but they've taken it and they've just amplified it to the nth degree, right now with well, dude, it's not even just like the push through Hollywood. You've just had the Roman Catholic Church come out, right, and endorse same-sex couples.
Yeah.
Did you see that?
Just yeah, actually, I believe my initial reply was anti-pope's gonna anti-pope, but that being said, it falls back to the slippery slope. I mean, there are people that'll say that that's a fallacy, but you look at where we were 10 years ago, and people haven't been allowed to evolve as they naturally would. There have been a lot of buttons pressed and a lot of levers pulled. It's I saw someone say that content online eventually drifts right wing unless it's moderated, and that seems to be the case. We see heavy censorship and moderation because, well, they don't really like that drift towards, thoughtfulness and tradition.
So Sandra's saying Jesuit infiltration. I don't know. I mean, these sort of narratives of the Masonic groups or Jesuit groups, etc. I've never really, and it's the same with the Hebrew. Okay, we'll call them that. The Hebes, right? Their eschatology, the Muslim eschatology. I've always found that they're distractions, and people get wrapped up in the or the more mystical details. But this is
for that matter.
I'm sorry, say that again.
Oh, even the minutia, the smallest parts of things. You'll get lost in the details, lose the forest for the trees, as it were.
Yeah, and this, I can't think of anything approximating what the Pope did last week in terms of turning doctrine upside down on his head. So now I might have to be rethinking my my thoughts as to how influential these people are. Where did it come from? Where was the movement? I didn't see any. I didn't see Catholics coming out in the streets saying, "We want gay equality." Where did that come from? Who pushed that through the whatever they would call it, papal process?
I legitimately couldn't answer that question. So much of what Francis does really falls outside of my understanding of Catholic dogma. I mean, it's honestly pretty alien.
Mm.
I don't know where a man of his views gets them, really, if he's in any way grounded in traditional Catholicism.
Mm. So, like I said, I don't want to step out of with one step in the stream, but I don't want to speak for Catholics myself. But I was out in the garden this morning, and I was just thinking about it. Even though I'm not Catholic, and I do have some contact with it because my mother's side is Italian, I still look at the church and what they do as because it acts as a center post around which the society and culture can move. And I'm I'm left somewhat speechless at this turn of events. And well, if I was Catholic, I would be leaving. I would be converting to something else.
No, that's completely understandable. I mean,
Are you Catholic?
oh no, I'm not. I'm not even really Christian. I'm just really interested in religious traditions.
So, I mean, you seemed fairly well versed in them last time we spoke. But so in that context, can you point to anything that even comes close to this type of distortion of traditional doctrine anywhere?
Honestly, off the top of my head, it is seemingly brand new. I mean, the only other thing I can think of that even comes close to this, and then that doesn't even really touch on religion, is a time 90-ish years ago in Western Europe when some things happened and then some other things happened that are not really cool to talk about.
Oh, you mean the baking cookies?
Yeah, they things got really wild in society, and then society moderated harshly. Some say.
Mm. Okay. Some say, right?
I wouldn't know. I wasn't there, so I would not be an authority on that sort of thing.
Well, so what I try and spend a lot of my time doing on this channel is just trying to say to people, don't get caught up in the you know the hysteria around particular events. Don't go running around
keep your head
proclaiming it's the end times, because you know what, you probably will lose your head, right, if you go down that pathway. But like I say, last week to be to watch that, because I had no idea it was coming. In fact, it was late for me when it came on, and it actually sort of forced me to come on and stream and just say, even as a non-Catholic, I denounce what their church is saying and what that means for society. Right, and the best example I could give is I lived in San Francisco for 5, 6 years, 7 maybe, and that place is rotten. Right, you could see it's rotten, but even back sort of 15 years ago, 20 years ago, and we've just let the church, the moral guide of the people, just say that, oh, suddenly that lifestyle is all okay. How come they could go to that step and not what in my mind what would have been? Sorry?
There was no intermediary. It went directly from, this is wrong to this is totally okay. I don't see a problem. There was no slippery slope there that normally occurs. There isn't There wasn't a period of normalization. There wasn't any kind of accommodation for people. It was just one day it's bad, next day it's good kind of thing. I mean, it does fit the pattern of Francis and his style, but nonetheless, it would certainly catch any reasonable person off guard.
And so this is what I. Why couldn't they do something? I mean, if they're prepared to go that outrageous with their doctrine, why couldn't they do the orthodox approach of marrying priests with women? But how come that wasn't on the agenda? How come he couldn't come out and say that? That would have seemed to me a far more logical step to do, and would have probably helped the church in the long run, because then it would probably fit the more orthodox Christian type model or the Anglican model. But
well, from a purely pragmatic standpoint, yes. From a point of power and greed, not so much. A proper priest is meant not to have a family, so as not to have a legacy. You are meant to be an instrument of the church, and when you're done, you're done. There's not really anything for you to pass on that's meant to go back to the church. So, that being the case, when you have a family, you have other concerns. Like, you've got to leave something good for your children. You've got to build a better world for them, as opposed to your flock, shall we say.
Yeah, but is it not the case that you can encourage your children to become priests, to devote themselves to the church?
Certainly, yeah. I mean, you could absolutely develop a priestly class, but then that gets us into the caste and class issue, which most modern organizations are absolutely loath to do. Well, openly, I should say. They'll certainly base such things on race and any other thing that they can come up with, but yeah.
So, do you know anything? So, a little while ago, there was an announcement, and I think it was from Pompeo, that they'd gone and made arrests in the Catholic Church a few weeks ago. Did you see anything about that?
I can't say I have. I would love to know more, though.
Yeah. So, it was. I can't say. I'm not sure if it was arrests, but like extraditions. Maybe someone in the chat knows, but it was. There's something definitely going on right now, and so I'm caught between how much of this is buying or playing into the conspiracy element, where you're condoning the idea of plandemic, right? That it's all orchestrated, and the including changing one of the major doctrines of religious faith on the planet. I can't still quite compute saying those words, even though I'm not fully Catholic, right? And
really
in this modern era, sorry.
Oh, it's astounding! It's absolutely breathtaking that they would do such a turn. I mean, I've never seen anything like it.
It's a considering the events of 2020, it's hardly surprising, right? And so, is this them looking? Has the church agreed that it's on board with this new world order agenda? Is that where this has come from and going?
Well, I mean, we do see the phrase "build back better," and we see it everywhere. And we've also pretty much seen that this Great Reset is not conspiracy theory anymore. It was actually just recently referenced in one of the major newspapers. So, I mean, they're kind of out in the open. I mean, I guess we're full on Agenda 21 here. And for those unfamiliar, I'll put a basic link on it. But next year is 21.
Well, expand on it, and let's see if we can sort of dig through it and see how much is relevant now. I mean, I try and put forward the line that these people are always doing these runs, etc. It's their job, and I still want to think that a lot of this was them grabbing the opportunity rather than sort of everything being planned in the Jesuit way, right, or the Masonic way, that they were doing everything with secret handshakes, and they managed to find the perfect virus to leak out of a Chinese lab, and a few months later, the Roman Catholic Church turns around and says everyone being gay is the new coolest thing. This just to me seems such a
it would
bizarre
make any
turn.
reasonable person completely incredulous.
Yeah, if you said that to someone this time last year.
Oh yeah,
right?
No, it sounds like something out of a complete fantasy.
Hmm.
But we look at things though, and well, in the immortal words of Rahm Emanuel, you don't let a crisis go to waste.
Mm.
And I mean, look, this is just the opportunity to corral people and have them do what you might want. I mean, it's for your safety after all. There's a virus out.
Mm. Yeah, and I'm loath to sort of grab onto the more fevered side of the internet, because I want to ground everything in science, and I think the social aspect of it as well should be if science is a good philosophical groundwork on which to base yourself, you should be able to look at the culture and society as well, and put yourself in and be able to deconstruct it such that it makes sense, like you would any other system in a experimental setup.
Well, that requires social sciences to follow rigorous science and be unbiased, which, well, social sciences are they tend not to fall in the middle of things. You get one or two on the right, and every single other one is on the left, because I don't really know why they went that way.
That's just the subversion through the institutes, right? So that's a Gramscian takeover, right? So they want to be able to how do you get new recruits each generation? Well, you have to get into the schools and colleges, and they went for the humanities first. And the problem is that sociology overlapped those two. The STEM fields and the I guess the liberal arts and the humanities, and now we're seeing that play out, right? And I would argue that that's a lot of the reason that you're seeing these freaks, nihilists taking to the streets currently at the moment, because look, man, you've got to come up with a way to argue that all these people were able to reach critical mass at this particular time, and that's a hard thing. That's a hard thing to do.
It's incredibly convenient. Too convenient, as you might say.
Yeah, and so this, I don't know. We were looking at one post that got sent to me, and it was a dude that had been arrested, and literally he had like is it Unabomber, but the guy that cut the swastika in his head.
Charlie Manson.
Yeah, say his name again.
Charles Manson.
Charles Manson, that's right. So there was just this kid. It was a kid, right? And to me, that's obviously a young lad from a broken home, because instead of the swastika, he'd carved in a crucifix. He had facial tattoos, and I would have said, looking at him, if he was 23, 24, I would have been surprised. And the thing is, that's not just one. There's hordes. There just seem to be hordes of them wherever there need to be across the United States right now. And like you said, it just seems incredibly convenient. And I would like to put it in the premise of, and Gramscian, Fabian sociology, marching through institutes, and what's their end goal? Well, I would argue it's a Bolshevik type response, and these are the foot soldiers.
Oh, sure.
But
absolutely, brown shirts.
How I'm struggling with. I want to see the mechanism by which they said, okay, we're pulling the trigger right now. I'm stealing a corny aphorism from Brian Rose, who we take the piss out of. I don't know if you know who that is, London Real. But who was able to coordinate such large groups under things like, especially Antifa? Okay, and if you look into the history of Antifa, that was a Jewish group originally, and a lot of you can argue that a lot of the Bolshevik revolutionary types come from that particular tribe in the Middle East. So, yeah, I don't know how comfortable you are sort of following that line of reasoning on your stream. I mean, I do it pretty regularly, but you might be one.
I don't think mine is really the venue for that kind of conversation, honestly. I mean, we're going pretty far into left field with this, which I don't mind, because I actually do want to tackle, dogma, the occult, and the intersection of that in science. But I don't know if it's really the right place to have the discussion. Having said that, though, I mean, the facts are the facts. There's a great, you look at the Holodomor, you look at, similar incidents, and there's a great deal of these ideas that tend to come from a smaller number of groups.
Yeah, and I'd say I couch it in these terms. It's like, yes, they are involved. You can find them talking about it, but they're not the only ones, right?
Certainly. I mean, look at
there's other people who you should be looking at. And so one of the things that I was talking about before we started live on your stream was the corruption within the journals that we look to that are supposed to help guide the society and culture through.
Absolutely, the replication crisis.
Well, it's not the replication crisis right now. It's them coming out full on and getting into the political sphere and saying, "Vote Trump out."
Oh yeah, right? Yeah. It is astounding to see who has even just come out with a political stance that never would have before. The Washington Post, right? They came out for Biden. I think New York Times came out for Biden. New York Post is still banned on Twitter because they dared to report on something that's verboten.
Well, I mean, I think we can mention the names, right? It's out there enough now that we can say the Biden hard drives.
Yeah.
But I've made a rule on my Discord: don't post the pictures from there.
Oh well, we can't verify if the pictures are legal. I mean, that's a very real concern at this point. And that's pretty horrifying.
Yeah. And here's a hypothetical situation that I will put to you. Okay, so I think a very, very dirty, rotten piece of the architecture here can be laid at the feet of EcoHealth, Peter Daszak, and I'm guarantee that he's got the same types of clips with Chinese women. And they've been pandered to by, the honey traps, right? It's the equivalent of the Epstein honey traps, and these people who I would argue are instrumental in the virus coming out, okay, because they're doing the research, and they're also instrumental in publishing the research that's blocked the people being able to ask the question, is it a lab leak? Right?
Indeed, yeah. I could see that. A lot of these people do have high up media connections and have basically just said, no, you can't even have that discussion, like the scientist out of Hong Kong that, ended up on Tucker and also ended up banned on Twitter that said, no, I absolutely have proof. And having heard her testimony, it's fairly convincing, actually, that at the very least, we're looking at an escaped laboratory experiment.
Yeah,
if not more.
And that I temper myself by just saying it was probably a lab experiment, but they fucked up, right? And what they're trying to do is they're trying to
conclusion.
Right. You can't. the other side of the equation, which would be that somehow there's pangolins mating with bats, going to wet markets, etc. It doesn't hold water. We know that. And I was just looking at a paper. I'll put it in the chat again, but Frontiers. So now they've just come out in Frontiers of Public Health. So this is I've agreed to do an editorial for this. I'm supposed to. Anyway, but I don't know if you can see my screen, dude, but let me just put this link in the chat in your Discord. So that's actually, it's been reviewed. And thankfully, props to Frontiers Journal that you can see who reviewed this paper. And Jonathan Cooey is on there. And he's been instrumental in sort of getting a voice out onto social media, onto YouTube about the potentiality of it being a leak. Okay, rather than it being coming from a spillover event. But then, having said that, I would question Jonathan's objectivity in the writing of the paper. But you know, he comes at it from a particular editorial line, and well, I guess you know that then, right? You know that it's it's reviewed in that manner, so at least you know who the reviewers are, and it's been it's just two reviewers, but it's there, right? That's it coming into the scientific literature. It's been viewed nearly 8,000 times, and this, I would argue, is the way that Yang Li Min, the woman from Hong Kong.
Oh, the whistleblower, yeah.
Yeah, this is how she should have done her whistleblowing, and this is why I think that she blew the chance to get something approximating a legitimate takedown of the Chinese and the people doing this type of research. So, did you see the streams I did where we looked at the papers from Lang Yimin?
I did not catch that. No, I've only actually looked over them just briefly on my own. I've caught a breakdown of what it is, but that's actually been some while. So feel free to give me a refresher if you'd like.
Well, I mean, so my problem with it was, and I'm not in a position to be able to critique the methods that she's talking about, right? So I know they exist on in that domain, virology, molecular biology, those types of disciplines. So I can't say, oh, that's right or wrong in how you would do that. What I would critique is the way that she did the whistleblowing, right? And doing that through Miles Guo, and the Chinese billionaire with Steve Bannon.
Oh, sure. Yeah, that is in and of itself a bit of a poison pill. I mean, it shouldn't be, but the media is what it is. So, you can't just take something at face value anymore because, well, it makes you an anti-something or an ist or an ism of some variety.
Right. And this is where I think she just messed up, where they had a really good chance of just putting out a counter narrative if they'd done it through the scientific method. And what she should have done is basically kind of like what I do is you make up a seminar with a bunch of slides and you start talking through it. And what she could have done is she had her position, right? And if she felt she had to leave, she could leave. She could go. She could start doing presentations and submit the paper and get it onto the preprint databases. Right, so at least she can say there's something of substance to, or it's going out for review in some way, and she didn't do that.
Well, yeah, it's like putting out a brand new product without at least trying to get a patent, basically. So it might be a perfectly valid thing, and it might be the most innovative product ever, but by that same notion, somebody can just steal it or whatever. I mean, not exactly the perfect analogy, but at least it gives somebody something to have a framework of
Well,
reference.
it comes down to there's going to be people that dismiss the lab hypothesis. Why? Because their job depends on being able to do those experiments. If the people turn around and say, "Hey, hang on a minute, what is it that you're doing in these labs that can, if there's a cock up, can what suddenly lock us in our houses for years on end?" Right? So there's a big problem. There's a big problem with trying to well, I don't know, like she's whistleblowing. It's a very tricky situation. But yeah, I think the base point I want to make is the fact that she didn't follow normal scientific protocol and at least get it on a preprint server, she blew it. And it's a real shame, because what it does is then it makes it easier for the general public to say, "Oh, I read the headline about that. It got dismissed,"
debunked, as they say, which is
Sorry?
the new hotness. It's been debunked.
Yeah. And I'm how would you say? I would like, the thing is, because of the way she's done it and being linked to Bannon, it makes it more difficult to get and the thing is, we know that they've taken the databases down already. This is on public record with respect to the Wuhan Institute. But what I would say, and I've been arguing for the last few weeks, EcoHealth, right? So we pulled up these, I'll have to go, I can't remember which ones, but it was last week. And I encourage everyone, if you're not following on Twitter Billy Bosticson, you should do. He gets a lot of great stuff out. And he showed that EcoHealth has received money, US money, supposedly to have a public database of all the viruses that they find, which is part of the process of what they were working towards at the Wuhan Institute, right? And they're going out collecting viruses and seeing if there's a potential to spill over, and they were doing experiments to see if they could sort of augment that process. That's the whole point of gain of function research.
Sure.
And EcoHealth had a public grant talking about this database, right? And the fact that EcoHealth is not being audited right now and not handing over that database so other people can see what was being done, and hopefully it's a reflection of what was occurring at the Wuhan Institute, is a, well, I don't know, it's the crime of the century right now. It's the equivalent of like a sort of Watergate moment, but we haven't caught them trashing the documents. All we can do is infer it from the grants that have been put out and the posters that have been published. But I would, if anyone's in the United States listening to this, what you need to do is to get some pressure onto that non-profit, right? That's such a joke to be calling them that, EcoHealth, and say we want the databases that you have and the experiments that you did, and like audit everything, because they've probably been hiding everything. And Darlene is saying in our chat, Dazak was bringing samples back to the USA. Oh yeah, and they were taking samples out. So that was what was happening at Winnipeg. That's where was it Winnipeg in Canada? That's where they have the BSL-4. And they caught Chinese taking samples out. They're bringing stuff back in, and yeah, if anyone listening to this, like I say, if you're in the United States, that's your target, right? To try to get to the bottom of who did what, who paid who, and what experiments were done under with NIH money and these other small grants that they got. But yeah, I don't know how you feel about that. I mean, if I was you, I'd be down there with pitchforks, dude, and torches and pitchforks.
Well, this is the first I've actually heard of the EcoHealth Alliance being brought up, but I will put a link to that in here.
Oh God, if you haven't heard about EcoHealth Alliance, man, you're missing like a third of the whole the biolab leak story. Okay, so
Do fill me in
Peter
then,
Daszak.
please.
So Peter Daszak is the head of EcoHealth, and there's another few interesting characters. Olival, I want to say his first name might be Kevin, and Victoria. No, they didn't divulge what the samples were, and I've been told that NGOs are impossible to FOIA. Really? Wow. So that's
In the
a
States,
really
yeah, no,
sneaky
that's,
way.
they don't have a legal obligation to respond. They can be
Uh,
forced into discovery, however, but that's going to require you suing them, and these people
well,
usually have deep pockets.
um, I would say this: they took NIH money, and therefore they should be open to audit. You can ask the NIH to audit it because
No,
it's
that's a
their
very
money.
real possibility. There's a lot more, funny enough, there's a lot more transparency coming out of EU and UK projects. So if we have any EU or UK listeners, please
Mm,
feel free to prod.
mm. And there is, from what I can tell, a database of the experiments going on in the Wuhan facility, and let's. I can bring him up on my Twitter right now. Maybe I can find the link real quick. Let's just. I'm scrolling. Oh, it's JC. um, da, 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 da. Let's see if I can find it.
Oh, certainly.
Chief hydrologist.
And in the meanwhile, I actually have a great bit. I have some news that
Okay.
I will not say it's great. I'll link it to chat, and I'll link it here for you too. It's quite something. But Google Nest has a new feature. You'll be able to use it without saying "Hey Google." So it'll just never stop listening. I'll link that in the chat for all our friends to check out as well.
Well, I've pulled it up on the screen, and well, yeah, there you go. It gets more and more in your face as every day goes by. Let's just see. Oh, is this it? You use monkey cells to grow? Maybe. Let's just check this one. Virus and cells. Recombinant SARS-CoV. Oh, this is SARS-CoV. So this is another bit of news that I went through. So, do you know about the linkage with Ralph Barrick at Duke University?
That sounds incredibly familiar.
So he's one of the people that was able to sort of reconstruct the original SARS and the Yengli Shi, the Batwoman. She was part of his lab, and they've been working very, very closely on these bat or these coronaviruses. And in conjunction with EcoHealth, they put out so EcoHealth is part of this sort of group. So they're all sort of tied together. They all have conflicts of interests with respect to doing normal scientific procedure. And they came out with a paper in Proceedings of National Academy of Sciences, and maybe I can bring that paper up. But the next virus that you're going to be seeing is a pig diarrhea one, coronavirus, and it will be. Let me just see if I can find the paper. So they've just shown this month it will grow in human cells, epithelial cells, plus digestive tract cells, and it's got all these names on, and we're supposed to just sit and let these people keep doing this research, keep printing the papers, because that feeds the scientific machinery, right? That we have built, and it's a
Well, I can't help but think that we could really be better spending our money and resources than inventing new and fascinating ways to kill ourselves.
And there's there's a lot of, well, how would you say? There's you need to. Why has my Dropbox not been? Oh wait, sorry, I'm looking in the wrong folder. Wait, what? Yeah. Why put the resources into this type of research? Why go out thousands of kilometers into middle of nowhere and old abandoned mines and pull out viruses, right, that are very likely to not have any impact, right? And this is a huge issue around the scientific process. And I'm there's my Dropbox.
Oh, certainly. I wouldn't be surprised if some of those newly unfrozen, 30 and 40,000 year old worms, they try and figure out some awful use for those things.
Yeah, I saw that yesterday, and fascinating, right? That they were able to do that. But there's such I've lost faith so much in the scientific process and what these people are doing that it's wouldn't surprise me if something weird crawls out of the the ether, these frozen samples, and they start doing stuff with them. And why is my Dropbox not working? Screw you. Wait 1 second. Yeah, I'm trying to find this paper for the database.
And that was initially 2 years ago, by the way. That's actually not recent. That's only just
really?
come back up. Yeah, it's from July of 18.
Wow.
So who knows what sort of fun things they've been up to in the past 2 years?
Yeah,
I can imagine it's all nefarious.
It doesn't fill one with confidence. That's the problem. And no. I've been a strong advocate for, the scientific method is the way to get through this problem that we're encountering right now. Because like speech, the antidote to bad science is not to sort of stop the science, but to do better science. But right now we're in a situation where these people can control the narrative well, and that's why you had Yen Li Meng, the Bannon whistleblower.
Yeah,
that's a lot of the reason why she hasn't gone through the standard. Standard
they
process.
Wouldn't do the vetting. They would just say, "Well, you're unreliable. We refuse."
Mm.
Well,
and
I'm generalizing here, obviously, but in the current climate, I'm not generalizing that much.
No, it's a perfectly reasonable assumption to make. So I found the paper. Let me just bring that up. So I apologize for being so slow with my Dropbox, but here it comes. So the title is Swine Acute Diarrhea Syndrome, Coronavirus Replication in Primary Human Cells Reveals Potential Susceptibility to Infection.
And what's the date on that paper?
This is last month, I think. Let me just find.
All right.
I see a date on there. So it was published August 18th, received for review January 22nd.
You don't
2020. Say. Those motherfuckers. I'll put it.
Busy bees.
Yes, and so let me just read the sort of end of the abstract here. So it goes as correct. So fortunately, they write in the abstract as coronaviruses cause severe economic losses. In this case, in the pork industry, but you could extend that now to literally everything, right? And this is why. We've gone beyond the looking glass, right? Like Alice in Wonderland.
No, absolutely, we're well beyond.
So just think of the economic damage that's been done by the current state. The current situation that we find ourselves in. I'm just sort of scanning the paper, and they actually mention Wuhan in the introduction as well. But let me just contagion. So it can cause big breakdown and cost the industry, etc. So we synthetically resurrected a recombinant virus, SARS-CoV, as well as derivative encoding to my red fluorescent protein. And so this is what Ralph Barrick's lab does: is they reconnect or remake these viruses and make them infectious again, right? To study them, and this is a
I can appreciate science for science's own sake, but this seems like seems legitimately dangerous.
Oh, what's the matter, big boy?
Oh dear, a little one.
What happened? What happened? Huh?
Oh dear, the poor little ones. Well, in the meanwhile, I'll entertain the chat with an interesting bit of news. There is actually something good going on right now. There's a low-energy method for upcycling plastic waste into useful stuff.
Yeah.
I'll drop that in your chat so that they can actually check that out. It'll be on the YouTube chat, guys.
And I've Mint solved that problem real quick. So you were mentioning science doing something useful for a change.
Indeed. Good recycling of plastic, not just melting it down. What they're wanting to do is actually turn plastics, get them back to kind of their initial state with recycling as opposed to just a big mesh of stuff. Well, basically, they want to change the process. Recycling plastic is a highly energy inefficient process, and it just largely doesn't get done unless it's going to be used into like some sort of pelletized form or something like that. You can't really recycle your higher end plastics. You can't. Well, you can do anything if you've got the money and the time, but this is kind of pulling the money and the time down a little bit.
That's good news. And this is something that I always try to emphasize because people, there is the big discussion around. The scientific process breaking down that charge has been laid at the feet of the people that would push the climate change argument. And my own personal view is that once that scientific process became politicized, you can't trust the data coming out of it.
And it doesn't even matter what field, for that matter.
Yeah, and it's the exact same thing is happening right now to microbiology, virology, and this has a key impact on how they would want to structure policy, right? And it's very, very tough not to just be pulling out all the conspiracy stops and saying, and we're hitting like the pinball, right, falling down through the machine. We're hitting those bumpers, and I'm trying to avoid that as much as we can because look, if we agreed with the whistleblower, the Bannon whistleblower, right, and you tried to take that into an environment where you're trying to do orthodox science, you'll get shot down straight away, right? And the public needs to be able to get on top of the science such that they can have a cogent discussion rather than freaking out about, like you say, you mentioned the specific agendas, and yes, maybe they're going towards those policies. They're enacting the smart cities, and but part of those narratives can get distorted as well in the public discourse especially on the internet. And I'm trying to choose my words really carefully here. I want to be able to make sure that there's some accountability, and right now, in the current circumstances, we have a paper trail from these people who were doing these experiments to Wuhan, and from if it came from the mine or they made it up completely synthetically. I'm not going to argue that point, but there's enough of a trail for the people to be able to follow it and say, oh, he was involved, she was involved, and now we want these people audited. And if they can make a, I mean, are they still trying to? I guess the impeachment thing stopped, right?
No, that fell apart.
It fell apart. So, but no doubt they'll try and pick it up again if he's elected into the second term.
They'll try and figure something out. I don't know if they'll be able to go for impeachment. They might have to try another avenue because they've kind of bled that river a little dry at this point. With everything that's happening now and the new connections that are coming up between the opposition and the people that they're basically, the opposition is kind of all together in this, and that makes for a really incredibly complicated narrative. So they're more than likely to just try a new angle of attack, because as short as people's memories are, and as dogged as the efforts are to shorten those memories, there are some things that just kind of stick. You know, you go with something for, I don't know, 3 years, people tend to remember it.
Well, there's Dunbar's number, right? There's only so much info you can sort of pack into your sort of everyday cognition. And so, yeah, there's a problem right now with respect to the pandemic and it being so politicized, is that there's this technical edifice that people have to get up to be able to speak cogently to people that have their hands and are dirty in this process. And so you can look at this.
Yeah, there's a real disconnect between the people that understand and the people that need to understand. Actually, I'm hoping to try and conquer a little bit of that with my own podcast here, try and make these things a little bit more relatable to the common man.
Yeah, I think, and that's the position. I guess that's why we're talking, right? I sort of took the approach that I could have, there's the obvious neurological issues. I mean, that's come forward now, right? As much as people denied it.
It's good to finally see to see the scientific society at large finally, talk about some of these, sequelae, is that right?
Sequelae,
yes. But these knock-on effects that just haven't been issued, or haven't been addressed, like the COVID zombie. We're finally getting people talking about, maybe there's a neurological effect here. I mean, you wouldn't stop being able to smell and taste if it wasn't affecting your nervous system. So maybe let's look a little deeper into that. And would you look at that? Maybe there's some long-term damage that we don't understand the full ramifications of.
Yeah.
And honestly, we won't for some while.
Well, you get into territory where if you're saying to people, there could be, there seems to be long-term neurological impact. Often, I find that the reaction, even though we can demonstrate that now, and it's pretty obvious in the data that's coming out, it's such a shock to people's system to be.
People are incredulous.
Yeah, to think that there's that threat.
It's a flu, bro. So, a flu doesn't drive you crazy. A fever might, but that passes. But this isn't merely a fever. I mean, it wouldn't, as I said, it wouldn't affect your nervous system if it didn't affect your nervous system. And we can look straightly at the, we'll call them rabies inserts, and the fact that it does cross the blood-brain barrier. We know it. Yeah. It's been demonstrated. It's common knowledge if you've bothered to do any digging at all.
Yeah. And there's an issue here with, okay, we've kind of got that message out and people are listening. Now is they're going to be like, well, okay, what's the solution to this problem? And from what I can see, well, there's two approaches. For the first is your sort of personal responsibilities, the things that you can do, right? And I think those are empowering. If you sort of say, well, you understand why you're wearing a mask, to protect your brain and body from something that's you might not even notice. It might put you in the ICU and you're intubated for a month. Did you see the case of that woman who they pronounced clinically dead for like 30 minutes?
No, not at all.
Oh yeah, so this was last week in the US. So she was young as well, I want to say she was in her 30s, and she'd been pronounced clinically dead, organ shut down. They kept her sort of going with the intensive care machines, right? The machines are doing everything for her body, but then she's come out, right? 3-4 months later. I mean, she's had to learn everything again, but that's happening, and the fact that there's
and it says she actually caught it twice, no less.
Sorry,
it says she caught it twice, no less. Oh no, this is a different woman. This is a different woman. The first
I'll
time.
see if I.
Let's see if I can.
I'll see if I can find it, but it's a testament to, well, the technology that we have available to us, that they can do that, and a testament to the will of the mind and the biology to keep going, even though it would have been, she's crossing the veil, right? They said that she was brain dead, right? So there was no activity in cortex or brain dead from COVID. Survived. Let's just see what I get. See if I can find this, because it was 26-year-old COVID patient deemed brain dead leaves hospital. So it says nearly brain dead in another.
COVID-19 survivor walks out of rehab after being pronounced brain dead. This is just from the 20th. This is just a few days ago. 25-year-old. Well, I won't share the name because there's no need for that. Diagnosed back in May. Low symptoms. Nursed her mom back to health. And then she got bad. Strokes, had a heart attack, had to be revived, had to have a defibrillator internally placed. Goodness gracious. They thought they should take her off life support because she had no hope, thought she was a vegetable, and she was in rehab for more than a month. She had to learn how to eat, dress, and stand. Goodness gracious. That's astounding. I'll make sure and provide a link to that here. I'll give that to your chat too, in case they're interested.
I mean, I've got just a particular save me doing it. But what I would add to that, she was 26 years old, right? And that is that's in what we would consider the age range. There's some risk, right? But generally, my advice would be you're going to be okay, right? If she'd spoke to me and said, "Oh, I've been diagnosed," I would have said, "Oh yeah, your age, you're probably going to be okay." But it's this unpredictability about the agent which makes it very difficult to.
And just as a note, she was not in any sort of danger group. No real prior health issues that should have caused anything. At least from the reporting I can find.
And This is why I try to say to people, it doesn't matter if you get through. Okay, there's other people around you, and I would hope to think that under the current circumstances, when there is so much sort of pressure on, especially in the United States, because the thing is, what really struck me about the United States when I went there was the generosity of people, right? And everywhere that I went, literally, you could strike up a conversation with Americans and they would be good to go, and they would be like the nicest people on the planet. But then you could get into this dialectic, and particularly the political side, and it's a bizarre state. I have to, from my perspective.
Yeah,
But I
politics and
would,
religion are kind of the two things that can end up becoming very complicated.
and it seems to me, the polarization has gone way beyond anything that I saw when I lived in the United States.
And, in just honestly, from about, well, there was something that happened in 2014, and it pissed off a lot of people, and they've been very, very vocal since, and that was kind of the time when we kind of noticed the wave going in the other direction, as it were.
You're talking about Obama or
Gamergate of all things?
Oh, wow, that's gotta
love the throwbacks, don't we?
I see that point. There was it was kind of like a cultural turning point where areas had been closed off, and it's the same in the institutes, right? I'd considered STEM fields insulated from the critical theory proponents that were marching their way through the humanities.
Oh yeah, and the halls of academia writ large, for that matter.
And I guess with I game, so I kind of sort of peripherally remember it, but I wasn't sort of following it that much. But it was like the last refuge for males where they could sort of not feel that they were being constrained by this new language that the critical theorists were trying to instantiate on society and culture.
Well, the last bastion of real escapism, if you will, uncorrupted and largely unmolested. Now, as we've seen, unfortunately, many companies have gone the way of so many other purveyors of woke capitalism, and it has not done well for their numbers, as many have seen. I mean, I don't know if you're familiar, but the NBA has decided that they're going to be a little less political in 2021. Not for any real reason, certainly not for the diminishing size of their wallets, obviously. It's entirely because they just don't want to get into politics.
Yeah, I mean, you're taking people's leisure and then you're shoving your politics down their throat, and that's always the modus operandi of the left. And look, man, I'm not. I'm critical of both sides, but the what would you call it? The desire to control or to take control of institutes, and it seems to me tear them down. Right. I've never been able to get into a dialogue with someone who would come from that side of the political spectrum, and they have a coherent idea about what they're going to do or how it should be in 20 years. Right?
Oh yeah, no, it's entirely a burn it down thing, and there is no after. It's just we burn it down, then question mark.
Well, then you're all equal, right? You're all.
Oh yeah. We burn it all down, and then everything's fixed. It's perfect now because there's X. However, X remains unsolved at this point.
Yeah, and it's kind of reaching a crescendo in the United States, and the way the United States goes is the way the world goes. I think there's a lot to.
Well, as we were discussing at the beginning, these coming days, even. I mean, we are really at the line to see how things play out. There's undoubtedly more crazy leaks coming. I have to say, this is the most surprising set of October surprises I have ever encountered in all my life.
It's been pretty nuts, right? From Trump going into hospital to uh, the just the whole chaos around pandemics and the like I say, I've seen enough of the pictures coming out of just tangentially, and I know these people do that kind of thing, and that's why I was saying earlier, all these people involved in China, right? Because that's where Biden's getting all these all that filth from, right?
Oh yeah.
I guarantee you, all the other people have got dirt on them like that, right?
Oh yeah. You can basically rest assured there are any number of Epsteinian games being played with people in positions of power.
Well, and just for October surprises, you've had Ghislaine Maxwell's documents released, right? Or
Absolutely.
the
Much to the consternation of many powerful elites.
and it's not just Israeli honeypots. All these countries do it, man. And I don't know. I'm not sure how. So keeping it in the domain of science, right? So on the proximal origin of SARS-CoV-2 paper, there's an author called Ian Lipkin, and when you're writing a paper, you're supposed to state if you have conflicts of interest, etc. And he's so in bed with the Chinese that he's had multiple photographs taken of him with Xi Jinping. He's been given special awards for service to China, etc. And like I say, he's a very famous virologist, and he's on that paper that's shielded the scientific community from scrutiny from the public, because the newspapers that people would read to sort of get the information go ask the question, did it come from a lab? And then they were like, no, this paper's been accepted, etc. And this Ian Lipkin has this massive trail of interaction with the Chinese over decades, right? And well, you can look at the politicians as being corrupted. So they had a weird name for Biden, right? In that, I'm trying to think of what it was, Boss Man or something, or but everything, like they'd have to clear it and present it,
The big
and
guy,
they wouldn't use
I think it was.
big guy. That's right. And you can rest assured, man, that they are the same thing happens in the scientific domain.
Excuse me. Yes, I've been corrected by your chat.
I thought you said big man. You didn't
No,
say
I
big
said
man?
big guy.
Big guy. Oh, big.
Which would have been even more meme-worthy, but no, not quite. He wasn't a big guy for us. He was a big man.
Well, I mean, it's interchangeable, right? Big guy, big man. If you come from Scotland, it's the same thing. And so, you're right, big man. So I would, like I say, there needs to be a push, especially if you're in the United States. Follow the NIH money back to DASAC, right, and get that database, right? See if it's still accessible, and then hold them to account, right? I think there's enough circumstantial evidence in the public domain now we know what happened with respect to Wuhan, the city of Wuhan, the institute. Something happened there, right? And whether it was leaked or salted or whatever, right? It needs to be.
Well, we need answers.
Yes,
Sure and simple.
That's.
I mean, we don't even necessarily have enough. We don't have the information to even know exactly what questions we're supposed to be asking. I mean, we know where we need to be asking the questions, and we have a general idea of whom we should ask, but there's so much still in the air that we don't really know quite what to.
They've had a year to go through those databases and lab books and alter them, See, this is a big problem right now. I think you would struggle to get um, an honest audit. I mean, who does the audit and who can understand it, and who's not going to have connections to this virology world? And let me pull it down to the blog podosphere, right? What we're doing. So there's a podcast called This Week in Virology. Have you heard of it?
Not at all.
Okay, so it's relatively well known on YouTube, etc. And it's the world of viruses, and the guy. Let me just see if I can pull up the guy's name. But he's had every one of the primary suspects on within this last year. Let me just find.
I'd be surprised considering how things are.
Well, the problem is that the research world is small, right? And it'd be like my field. Okay, there's probably 200 people. So Vincent Rancinello, do I want to give him the subscription? But 70. Shut up. But this man has been part of the machinery that's been part of the obfuscation of the facts, and he's had every one of the people on there who's tried to push the zoonotic spillover hypothesis, right? And
gotcha, status quo people.
Sorry, say that again.
Status quo people.
Yes, very much. People who are paid,
if you like.
Yeah, not to see or believe in the
they're not there to ask.
When their paycheck is dependent on not paying it or not understanding it, they're not going to understand the other side of the argument. And well, he's based in the US. This is something that I can point to, but people in the US have to hold these people to account. I wish I could, but it's not my field. And but I'd be phoning their office every morning, right? These people, and and the point I wanted to get to is it's so small, and it's a very cliquey group, right? And he's a like you said, company man, and
bought and paid for.
Yeah, and they actually did an episode where they trashed the. Let me just bring that paper up. The Yan report. The leaker. Yeah, the other thing. I'm just bringing. So they basically did an hour breaking down the paper from Li Meng Yang, and I did a stream on it, and basically it was a dismissal from it was an ivory tower dismissal, right? Because they said that they were going through it, and it's not like the methods that she's proposing in the paper are invalid. It's just they make the argument that there are other methods and other techniques which you could use to make the virus that you want, right? And I don't know enough.
Sounds a little bit like a God of the Gaps kind of game. No, that's not really accurate. It seems more, I guess what I'm trying to say, they're coming at it with they already have their end goal in mind, so they're working towards that, as opposed to considering options that might lead them to something different.
Yes, absolutely, and that's exactly what they do, right? And the problem is that of course she's tainted, But she's come forward, and I also know, and we've heard very little about it, but apparently there's a second whistleblower that's gone to Europe. And I'm hoping that that one is going to do the
due diligence, as it were.
yeah, do the process properly. And the problem with Li Mengyang is that, you know, she's got help from people who are known in the field somewhat, and who worked hard at trying to establish the lab leak hypothesis. And the problem is that now they're tainted, right? And the well, it should have gone to a preprint server first. And, you know, you look at the paper, and it's not even formatted properly like I would for review, right? So like the spacing is wrong, the structuring of the argument is wrong. And so this leads me to the
well, it would allow these people to more easily dismiss it. Again, you say from an ivory tower position, like it's a your versus your thing. It's like, well, you forgot the apostrophe. Obviously, you're an idiot. So you know nothing. Whether or not the legitimate scientific method and the information contained therein is valid, they're just going to dismiss it outright because, well, you didn't cross your T or dot your I. How can we trust anything else you say?
Right. And this is a big problem. And there's the PRRA insert, right? This super antigenic rabies-like sequence. They've pulled they say that conveniently they find in some bats another virus similar. So I'll try and find that paper as well. But so it's spontaneous furin cleavage. Let's bring that up. So it's current biology. A novel bat coronavirus closely related to SARS contains natural insertions at the S1, S2 cleavage site of the spike protein. Right? And this came out, let me just find brief report, June 8th. So a Chinese study just happens to find another example of the beta coronaviruses, which there's these long list of beta coronaviruses that do not have this polybasic cleavage site in them, right? The furin cleavage site. And suddenly they find one. Now, you can go through this paper and you get down to where they're listing out the sequences. So I'll pull that up on the screen.
I'd appreciate if you'd link that too. I'd love to have that for everybody that's going to listen to this afterwards.
I can probably give you download the paper.
Provided it's available.
Yeah, it should be that.
Okay, great. I'll make a link for that for folks.
Let's see. Let's zoom in. So on Figure 2, you can see this consensus SARS-CoV-2 and its amino acid sequence, right? And it sits in this part of the S protein that's covered with these sugar residues, basically. And it's these sugar residues which kind of block the ability of antibodies to get on. And so you're drawn towards virus RMYNO2, which is in red below it. And you're given the sequences and the amino acid sequence number. And then they find a P, so phenylalanine, arginine, I guess it is. And they're saying, look, we found this sequence in, so it's a synthetic virus. It's not even like they've found it. It's something that they've built in silico.
Something specifically for the purpose. Is that what I'm hearing?
And the thing is, there's a frame.
This is like the. I mean, it sounds very like what Volkswagen did with the diesel study, where they made systems to basically just produce exactly the result it needed to produce, whether that was what was really happening or not.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like that's kind of analogous to the situation.
Yeah, it's precisely analogous, and what they've done is they've managed to pull together this sequence, but they show that there's a bunch of sequences missing. So if you look at Figure 2H, at 675 to 677, and somehow they shift it over, and they say that this, and they're missing the. I'm not sure what the R is, which. Amino acid it is, but suddenly it's sitting in that S1, S2 boundary, right? And they've basically just shifted it over, which is technically a frame shift. And da-da! Suddenly they've found another one,
So
like
is this
R80.
even an extant thing, or is this like just something that may or may not even exist in a laboratory?
So they took samples from it's basically in silico, but let's just read the methods. So yeah, the problem with it being a method is it's a short report, so the methods are not in this paper. You have to go to supplemental material. But okay, so basically what they did is between May and October 2019, we collected a total of 302 samples from 227 bats from Mengala County, Yunnan Province, Table S1, so you have to go to supplementary materials. These bats belong to 20 different species, the majority of samples from Rhinophilus leonus, Hipposideros levatus, and Rhinophilus steno. The samples comprise multiple tissues, including potassium, I'm not sure what that is, lung, and liver and feces, and all but 3 bats were sampled alive and subsequently released, based on the bat species, primarily identified according to morphological criteria and confirmed through DNA barcoding. The 224 tissues and 78 feces were merged into 38 and 18 pools, respectively, with each pool including 1 to 11 samples of the same type. These pooled samples were then used for next-gen sequencing. Right, so they don't even have the original virus. They're saying we took all the stool samples,
They've got
we've mixed
a pot full of virus, or
yeah,
a pot full of viri. I even should say.
yeah, or fragments of viri. Right? You don't even know what it is because they've just thrown everything in together. Right, and so they go on.
Boy, that's bad
I
science.
didn't catch. Say that again, dude.
That's atrociously bad science.
Yes. Yeah.
And
it's just way too convenient. It's way too convenient, and the the timing is just off, and this is the problem. People are just going to lose faith in the scientific process with this type of approach. And again, unless you were able to read through the technicalities of the paper, it becomes a sort of it's just that step too far. If he's in there, we have he makes all our intros one step too far. That's his name. But it's one step too far often for normal or not normal people who have not had scientific training to be able to read through this and say, well, hang on a minute, there's something not quite right. Okay, so it goes on to say, using next-generation metagenomic sequencing, we successfully obtained 11,954 and 64,224 reads from pool 39 and a total of 78,477,464 clean reads that map to a previously identified SARS-like bat coronavirus CP Yunnan 2011. Oh, I wonder if that lines up with the miners strain, and to SARS-CoV-2. So, and then from this generated 2 preliminary consensus sequences after a series of verification steps, including remapping, 1 partial 23,395 base pair, and 1 complete beta-cov genome sequences. So they're mixing different genomes, right, and pulling out what it is that they want to see, and so they just happen to find what seems like a polybasic cleavage site, but there's this bit missing in that figure 2, which is the frame shift, and they've just put it over, and we have no idea whether this is true. It's just an
It's a
electron.
construct.
Yeah, it's a construct. It's purely in silico, and it comes from a perspective of, I would argue, oh, we need to show that this is natural, right? And it's a big journal, right? It's Cell Current Biology, so this is going to have big impact factor, okay? And let's see who's involved. So, who do we find here? Oh, one institute, Marie Bashir Institute for Infectious Diseases and Biosecurity, School of Life and Environmental Sciences, the University of Sydney, Sydney, New South Wales. We had a stream the other day where we looked through, right, where are conflicts of interest, okay? And what do we find? It's Edward C. Holmes. University of Sydney receives $1 billion a year. I think it's either $500 million or $1 billion a year. No, I think it's $500 million from Chinese students. And you could just go online, and there's whole web pages devoted to how the professors and those that are teaching the degree classes at the University of Sydney are being made or not allowed to fail Chinese students. Right, because they're getting so much money from China. And we're supposed to believe that this guy, Edward C. Holmes, who is also on the proximal origin paper, right, is doing something that has just found something that didn't exist in the records for decades prior to SARS-CoV-2 coming out.
How terribly convenient.
Yes, right. And,
so many convenient things regarding SARS-CoV-2.
Yes.
So many convenient happenings.
And
you know, if one were a conspiratorial sort, they might think that something was up.
Yes. It wouldn't be a big leap of imagination, right? And well, as a scientist myself, I'm struggling to say to people, well, you know, we need the scientific method to navigate through this situation, right? Because otherwise, these people run rampant.
Well, now more than ever. I mean, this is purely a scientific issue, and science caused it, and science can fix it.
Well, I would hope we can fix it. The problem is, I don't know how deep the rot is. Has it got to the point like the Catholic Church, right, where they can do whatever they want, and there's going to be no resistance? I don't know.
I mean, really, 2021 is going to be a very interesting year. We will we'll kind of see the course that the world will be taking. I mean, that's going to lay it down in fairly plain terms.
And like I say, they're shoving the papers in your face. So the same group, right? The same people that are all linked, saying now that there's a pig diarrhea coronavirus coming. Okay. Excuse me if I'm just a little bit skeptical about your projections and what we should be doing. And for sure as shit, excuse the pun on it, but that pig diarrhea virus that they've resurrected and found replicates in human tissue, I absolutely guarantee it will mess you up. If an illness is often going to kill you, it's diarrhea like illnesses, right? Because it's very difficult to maintain your osmotic balance under such circumstances.
Yeah, that's understandable. Yeah, I mean, your body's basically just purging nutrients and everything, and also has a lot of trouble holding on to them. I mean, you basically just starve a person to death.
Yeah. And like I say, in Proceedings of National Academy of Sciences, August, I pulled that paper up, but they're telling you, literally telling you, this is coming your way, okay? And we have the power within the sciences to not only come up with, so let me just find the proximal origin paper. So I'll put that up and I'll put it in your Discord. And the proximal origin paper is a tiny little report. It's like, it's correspondence. It's a letter. It's a letter to nature. And that is the edifice on which they've built the narrative that it comes from pangolins. And now, Peter Daszak, they've found a paper saying it comes from raccoon dogs. They're finding it in raccoon dogs in the wet market, conveniently. That was yesterday. And I'm, in some ways furious, but it's if I don't talk about it, then who is? Right? I know there are other people out there doing it, but it's few and far between. At least you're at least you're trying to do.
Out. People really need to think critically at this time. More than really any other, because we are in a crisis, and critical thought is one of the few things that might save you, especially if you're not thinking clearly. You can back away from that and try and make some sense of your situation. You might be able to do a little better. And I kind of think there's this concerted push to keep people from thinking critically and, really backing up from this. It's a matter of keeping people right on edge so that they don't make good decisions.
Yeah. And like I say, if it was in my field and I had the expert or the clout to take them on, I would feel it my duty to do it. I mean, I feel like it's my duty right now, just because I've seen how the science sausage is made, right? And so I can see the conflicts of interest on the front pages that people should be pulling up, and they're letting slide. Okay, and the fact that so let's just for the readers' sake, we'll look down at this proximal origin paper. And what do you know? Edward C. Holmes from Sydney University is part of that paper too. And a few months later, he finds a kind of polybasic cleavage in the wild from mixing up all these samples they've taken. Right?
So we've got ourselves an incestuous little group here.
Yes, very much so. Very much.
Daddy?
Yes, big boy.
I got tired of watching.
What?
Yeah?
I might have to hang up, dude. I've got
Understand. Fatherly duties.
Daddy, I got tired of watching.
Yeah, they'll be there in a minute, big boy. Okay, are you hungry? Yeah. Yeah, okay. I think that's a good point. I've given you the papers, and that's a good sort of point that I would encourage anyone that's listening to just start checking the names of these people. Let me just find the pig swine diarrhea. Did I give you that one? Right. So here's the swine diarrhea, and this has Peter Daszak, Ralph Barrick. Please look at these papers, people. Look at the networks that are building up. EcoHealth needs auditing for their databases. The American people paid for it. Okay. And there's your way to get answers. You're not going to get it from the Chinese, but Peter Daszak is walking around with a copy on his hard drive. Sees that hard drive, and I bet you find he's been nailing little pleasure girls as well in China.
Well, hopefully he wouldn't be so dumb as to have a hard drive full of pictures of his own proclivities, which that is legitimately astounding. How dumb can you be?
I know, but they
and vain, for that matter, too. I mean, if we look at Hunter, he really likes pictures of himself.
Yeah, and that's what's the vanity? That's my favorite sin. People need to watch Devil's Advocate, right, and find out about those sins. And have you seen that movie? Al Pacino, Keanu Reeves.
Yeah. Oh, that's a classic.
Yeah. So at the end, he's sort of gone through that trip. He's back in the courthouse, and he sort of he knows that teacher is sleaze because he was kind of jerking himself off at the table, right? And he goes and recuses himself from the case, right? And then the reporter turns into Al Pacino, who's the devil, and that even though he's taken what's the right path at that moment, he comes and says, vanity, definitely my favorite sin. And these people are vain narcissists, right? They're egoists as well. This is the problem with science, right? This is where they get the inflated egos. And it's incumbent upon everyone to, like I say, you need to, like the law, you need to know the science, and you need to find out how interconnected these groups are, right? And hold them to account. And I would say I've got a lot of Australian people listening. Okay. Well, how are people going to argue against billions of dollars coming in? I don't know, name and shame, I guess. I can't think of other ways, but
well, I don't know if we're really the people to come up with a solution, but at the very least, we can point out the problem.
Yeah, and to solve it, you need to understand what the problem is first.
Absolutely.
And right now,
can't confront a problem if you don't even know where to look.
And the problem right now is these cliquey little academic groups that are shuttling hundreds of millions of dollars around. So, dude, I'm gonna have to push out. So I don't know if you want to sort of tidy it up. Then I'll stop the Discord chat.
Oh, sure. No, it's been a pleasure. We can go ahead and just wrap here, and I'll let you get to fatherly duties. It sounds like you are most needed.
Yeah. Yes.
Well, it has been a pleasure, sir. We'll definitely have to talk again.
Yeah, and I mean, look, we're just starting to peel back the layers here so people can see. And like I say, I hope people just keep listening and spread this information, right? Let it get out there and let them know that we're on the case, right? We know what they're doing.
And okay. Links to all the data you just provided me, those PDFs, I'll make sure and put those up somewhere. It'll be in the links for wherever you're listening to this or watching.
Okay. All right. Dude,
have a lovely day, sir. It's been a pleasure.
Yes, you too. Thank you very much.